Hi, Jeff. Thanks for joining us today. We do so miss you up here at NAMI, Piedmont Tri-County. I hope everything's treating you well in Texas since the move. But I'm so glad that you chose to come out today and talk to us because I know your story is an important one. For those that don't know, I worked with Jeff during 3 or 4 years for NAMI, Piedmont Tri-County. We were going into the schools doing the End in the Silence program, and we did some other health fairs and things like that together. And I got to know Jeff and his story very well. And I think it's an important one to share. So, Jeff, before I take up any more of your time, why don't you tell us why mental health awareness is important to you?
Well, really the word stigma is so important to overcome. And there's still a stigma. There will be for quite some time, but we're cutting into it. And I know for my own recovery, overcoming stigma is a major hurdle, major challenge. And so actually the more awareness people have, and I've seen this actually in the autism community, which I've been involved with, the more people understand about it, the less stigma, the more power it brings to me in my life. To me, and also I kind of coined this as I was preparing for this, is that the path to recovery is about self-discovery. And awareness, actually, other people's awareness, my own awareness actually brings self-discovery to me. So in a nutshell, that's kind of what I would say it means to me.
So mental health awareness is important to break down that stigma because we know from working in the mental health field, from volunteering, we know that the idea of mental illness really affects the way, not only the way people approach you, how they think, act, and feel about you, but it also affects the way we think, act, and feel about ourselves and things that we do in our everyday life. So what happened to you? What do you consider like your defining moment? What was the backstory and what's the journey to recovery that I know you can share with us?
Well, actually, I have a late onset bipolar 2, and approximately about 6 years ago, I spent a week in a mental health facility down in Colombia. And it was really a manic episode. I had no idea about bipolar. Come to find out, I've got my grandmother on my dad's side was bipolar. Her brother was bipolar, but I had no idea. I'm a psych major, and I'd read about bipolar and so forth, but I didn't know the experience I was having was part of bipolar. And I looked at it as a spiritual experience, enlightenment, extraordinary, actually. Spent the time in the hospital. I was given actually a diagnosis of like a one-time psychotic episode. And really, there's no depression involved with that, but I continued on, got back into my job, and as a special education teacher, a lot of stress in that. And I went into a new position, and in the fall, about 5 years back, went into a new position, and I was having a great fall, but I'm learning new things. It's stressful. And actually, as I started becoming successful with these really great programs, I was having success with the kids, I started getting energized. But then that energy started to just overflow. And again, I was stepping back going, oh, I'm accessing my enlightenment again. This is wonderful. And people around me couldn't understand that except one person. And she just was very skeptical of me and was telling me, watch out, be careful, but really couldn't talk to me about it. And actually, it's kind of a strange turning point was I was having some great success with these kids, and I was co-teaching with this English teacher, 7th grade. And I knew I could reach these kids where they could make a leap in their learning. And she was very skeptical. But as time went on, came out with the grades, and they had made that leap. And I was actually in a meeting, or in the staff meeting, and we're doing shout outs, and she stands up and says, I want to do a shout out to Jeff, because these kids had this extraordinary leap. And she says, I love this guy. I love this guy. Well, within a week, I'm starting to cross boundaries where I saw where there could be more discipline in schools and so forth. I started crossing boundaries, and I made her so angry she hated me. So within a week, we went from this love because of how extraordinary things were going to this hate. And so it became a real problem with this in the school. I quit my job. I quit the job. And part of it with this mania that's going on is just like, I'm going to solve the problem. I'm going to quit the job. And then so actually it snowballed into my life, but I'm feeling great. I'm feeling great. And I'm doing all kinds of things that a lot of people with bipolar do. And not to get into the details of it, but it lasted for about 2 months of this high. And I ended up bankrupt. I ended up with people in my life, which actually in a few weeks or months later, they ended up in jail. So they weren't the best people to have around. I'm a single dad with a daughter. She's very fearful of these people now. She's also is traumatized by what's happening to her dad. I had done things like she was playing basketball, and I'm an introverted person, very reserved, down to earth, pretty much. And all of a sudden, I'm like the center of attention at these basketball games, and was traumatizing my daughter. I actually alienated my family, I alienated my neighbors, I alienated friends, and as actually with the mania, it became very dramatic. And then things started to fall into the depression. And really the depression started, and then I started to kind of wake up to the mess I had. And it was huge. And I didn't really know what was going on. I really didn't know what was going on. So I'm in this deep depression and worry and fear. And so it started to snowball into suicidal thoughts, my only way out. And really that's when I can look back, that's kind of when the recovery started, or it moved towards it. I had no support also, just my daughter. And she had no clue what's going on. So I reached out to my family, I reached out to my sister, and it was really cool. And this is so important. It's really cool as she said, Jeff, we've been waiting for you to call. They've been watching me from a distance. And that's the love I saw from my family, is that they were actually willing to not intervene in this. And it sounds kind of weird, but they couldn't. They couldn't. So they said, we're here for you. I just joked up thinking about it. We're here for you. And I kind of had to do the things just to move. And people really understand depression. It's a physiological, besides the psychological part of it's physiological, not being able to sleep, where I'm laying in bed worrying and ruminating on things and just worried to death. The only way out is suicide. And I can't move out of bed. I can't move out of bed. But my family, they encouraged me to go to see a psychiatrist. That was a huge, huge part. Is actually this psychiatrist showed me, laid it out, what was going on. It hit me perfectly. It says I have this bipolar 2, and so that started the road to recovery. First thing I had to do is I start cleaning things up. I didn't have a job. I was bankrupt. I was scared to death to go out in my community because of these people. And also with depression, it's like, I couldn't defend myself. So I felt like I just didn't have the faculties to defend myself, be it verbally, be it physically. I just had no faculties to defend myself. But I kept moving. I kept moving forward. And really one of the biggest changes physiologically with the depression was actually, I decided one morning to dance to this music. And it was painful to my whole body, but I just kept moving. And it kind of released this energy. It's almost like a stuck energy. And actually that pushed me forward to move. And that gave me more energy and more confidence. got on some medication, got on some sleep medication, was able to start sleeping. That was another thing physiologically. I just was starved for a good night's sleep without Ambien, just starved for it. But as things went, I was actually eventually able to kind of get to that. It was a long, probably 3 years till I really had a good night's sleep. It was helpful. I started looking for, financially, I'd been robbed. People, identity theft, bankrupt, $65,000 in debt. It's like, how am I going to dig out of this? But I went in ahead and I ended up getting 3 years of disability through the state of North Carolina, because I had worked for the school system. That was hugely helpful to rebound. And for me, that's exactly what that money was for me. I had no kind of problem having it, but I knew it would run out at some point in time. And I understood that, and that was actually a good thing for me, although it was painful and it was very worrisome. But with that ahead of me, I could continue to work in my recovery. So the medication, and actually one of the things that was hugely helpful, as I'm repairing things, what was hugely helpful was actually getting on, you reaching out to me to join on with NAMI as a volunteer. Is what part of my recovery was actually learning about bipolar and myself, because you can read about this in a book, you can be with somebody that's bipolar and so forth, but to see it in yourself is an extremely, it's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of hard work. It takes a lot of guts to look at yourself. But it's really where, like I said, it's self-discovery is the path to recovery. Learning about yourself, learning about your triggers, learning about how, instead of exercising and eating well, how we blow it off, and then seeing how it affects us. That takes a lot of time, to discover. And it's really, I can see it as a lifelong path. But yeah, going back, getting on with NAMI, for one thing, I brought it out. And it helped me with the stigma that I was dealing with. It helped, I got out, and I would talk about my situation. But then I started to teach these kids about mental health conditions. And when I was teaching the kids, I'm teaching myself. I'm teaching these kids about things to do if you get sad and so forth, or you get these emotional challenges and so forth. But and I'm looking, I'm not doing these things. But slowly I started to. I'm telling about there's three things. There's three things that everyone needs to do in order to have good health. And that's eat well, get some sleep, and exercise. It's very simple. But to follow that, knowing that, it's like, if you know it, but if you don't do it, you really don't know it. Right. And actually 5 years later, I'm finally getting to the point where that's just part of my life. That's just absolutely part of my life. Before it's just been kind of in and out. So that's a huge, huge part. It's just getting out there, sharing my story, being helpful to others. I think a big part of this whole journey is to really bring that service to others.
So can I just, because I know that you actually started this before your move to Texas, and yes, we're all terribly sad that you moved to Texas. We all miss you very much. And but we know that life is going really well for you in Texas. We know that things have turned around for you there, and you're with family, and it's kind of a coming home for you. But tell me, because I know that before you left here, you were taking on individual responsibilities to actually one-to-one with people. Do you want to talk about that, about things that you have achieved since you got into recovery, and the information that you found during your recovery, and telling your story and the interventions that you had for yourself, how you've managed to impart that to other people, and help them kind of start thinking about their own recovery?
Well, look, yeah, it's actually just before I left, my disability ran out. And, you know, I was piecing things together as far as extra income and with NAMI and so forth. And it ran out. And I was telling you, I was scared to death. Scared to death because I really didn't have anything unfolding in front of me. And I ended up substitute teaching. But then at the same time, I started taking on clients. And there was more dealing with people, kids that had disabilities outside of mental health, autism and physical disability, and also cerebral palsy and so forth. But, you know, bringing what I knew or know through this experience, I'm really able to help these other people, these people that don't have a mental health condition out. So I'd work one-on-one 2-3 days a week with them, and really doing my substitute teaching. I kind of tapered off from NAMI as I'm kind of weaning myself away from leaving the area. And you know, a big part of me coming out west was actually, I've been in Charlotte about 30 years. I grew up in the Southwest, and I was kind of like, you know what, it's time to leave it. My daughter was going to college and so forth, and you know, leaving friends and so forth. But I also left a lot of stigma behind. I've come here and I really got on it. It's like a new beginning for me. So that's when I started, you know, exercise plan, nutrition, different things like that. And it's really changed my life tremendously. I'm able to work full time. And really, you know, and a big part of this that I wanted to talk about with the recovery is the diet and exercise and how it fuels your recovery. And what I noticed also is that I came out here and it's like a celebration. I live in the same town as my sister, and my sister's not really conscious exercise-wise, diet-wise. She doesn't really know anything about bipolar. And so I indulge. I love sugar. I love to eat just like everybody else. And I started indulging with them. And, you know, I'm coming out there real high, feeling great. And then I start indulging. And I'm starting to lose my balance. And I started, actually, this is another self-discovery. I started to see how important and how imperative it is. How imperative it is that I have this plan that I stick to. And I fall off it. Now and then. But actually, with this pandemic, it's really there's so many silver linings in this thing. With the pandemic, I've been forced to be by myself, so it's kind of like, oh, this is the opportunity. There's a lot of boredom here. I can really get into this. And actually, it's kind of, you know, led to, you know, us on this. I don't know if this would have happened.
Great. So I think we have to say, before your bipolar episode 5 years ago, you were an accomplished special education teacher, doing really well. You were raising your daughter. You were doing what the rest of us, you know, basically see as normal life. Mm-hmm. Can I say that? Right. But the deal is, it's like, you know, the stigma that surrounds mental health. When you face these episodes, when we all face these episodes, because I would say all of us understand what anxiety is and what depression is. And, you know, when sometimes we go through these episodes, it can be life-changing, and it can change the way people feel about us and the way people think about us. They perceive our contribution to society. And I think that my biggest hope that during these 30 days of interviews that I do with people, they can see that successful people are successful people regardless of their backgrounds and regardless of some of the things that happen to them. So can we just talk a little bit about, what you see for your future and how you see, because yours was a completely brand new start. And I would like to know, what you see for your future ongoing.
Yeah, well, yeah, it is a brand new start, but I bring so much into it. And, what I started doing when I got here was to substitute teach. And I was inside schools that kids with a lot of mental health challenges, a lot with their parents. And coming into these classrooms, I can identify with these kids. And it's really great for me and for them is I can go in these classrooms and here's this guy that understands them. I can accept them for where they are. I can help them from where they are. And it's like, oh, Coach Max here. Coach Max here. So this has just been a tremendous thing for me. And where I'm moving towards is I got certified as a life coach. And, my clients I look to are people with mental health conditions. And really it's kind of, with the life coach, it's guiding people. It's guiding people. Somebody that understands. It's not a professional sits down with, any kind of therapy per se. It's more like kind of a friend relationship in many ways, but also a mentor relationship, steering people in different directions and so forth. So that's kind of where I am right now and starting that. And I can do this online. I've got friends that do this online throughout the world. That's the coolest thing with that. And I learned so much every day going through the process of getting this life coach certification. My teacher, he's a longtime therapist. He was a psychotherapist, cognitive therapist. The whole process of the learning, I got to deal with my bipolar throughout this whole process. So I'm open to bringing in when I can. I think part of the bipolar thing is that, at least for me, is I've had to find things that are flexible. Substitute teaching is very flexible. It's not an easy job per se. It's very challenging. It's very rewarding. But if I need to take a day off, I can take a day off.
Right.
But that's available. And I think it's like a toolkit of jobs and so forth. There's a lot out there of people that are kind of out of the mainstream, to make monies and so forth. So it's kind of what I'm doing now.
Right. And so in many ways, I mean, bipolar or not, having a flexible schedule, works for many of us, and having the ability to balance life experiences and life with what we're doing as a job, is actually a really fulfilling way to live. It's rather than going 9 to 5 into an office and completing a task and then going home and it's a separation. For a lot of us, it's like having that, having the ability to fulfill life with both in what we're doing as a job and in what we're doing for a career, and also having our life available to us to have the fun things, to go hiking, to go visit with friends, to go hang out with family, those kind of things, I think is super important. And I think whether you're in recovery from a mental health condition or not, I think that's, kind of, if you can achieve that balance, then you're a lucky person.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's a key word. And actually, as human beings, we work, and finding the right work is so important to this. I mean, so many people don't find the right work.
Right.
And they're really, this is an opportunity. Having this disability, or whatever you want to call it, it's an opportunity to really learn about yourself and learn what type of work you like.
Right.
And when you say balance, also, this is the great teacher, is that, and there's a silver lining in everything. And the thing I looked at was like, what is this bipolar? What is it teaching me? Why? Because there's always something that comes out of this, lessons and wisdom. What it's teaching me is balance.
Right.
it's constantly pushing into the back to balance. And if you look at things that are in balance, the planet is in balance. If it goes out of balance, we're all done.
Yeah.
If you look at a wheel that turns, it's in balance and it spins effortlessly. And really out of balance comes harmony. So this bipolar, some people I looked at maybe on a razor's edge, but as we move or put nutrition in and exercise and do those things that bring balance, I look at that razor edge that maybe living your life on, maybe becomes a tightrope.
Right.
And maybe as continue to get stronger and stronger and stronger, maybe it becomes more like it can become a sidewalk.
Right.
And we fall off sidewalks and different things like that. It's like everybody else.
Right.
Everybody else. But it's this opportunity, that is the opportunity also.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think that's, I'm so happy that you are using what you've learned during this to just meld it into your life. It's not about becoming a mental health counselor. It's not about becoming a mental health coach. It's just about taking what you've learned and being well-rounded and kind of bringing that to the conversation along with all the other stuff that we go through in life, and just making it, part of the conversation. And I think that's going to end the stigma around mental health more than anything else that we can do, is to stop dividing it out into portions of our life and portions of our personality, and actually just say that, this is part of life, right? This is part of this is how we live our lives. So, all right, well, I'm going to wrap it up right now because we've been going for about 30 minutes. And so right. That's great. I super appreciate you talking to me today. I'm going to add any resources to this that you have for me. If you have any resources, I'll put these on under the recording that we have. But in the meantime, thank you so much. Have a great day down in Texas. Hopefully it's not warm. We have a bit colder up here, but